All right, hello everyone. End of a very horrible long week. I'm Lance Ash, and beside me on the sofa is my wife Bonnie.
Hello.
And it's a horrible week because even though I got sick. I already had Veterans Day off, and then I had to call in Monday night for being sick as shit. And I've been sick all week, and today was horrible. Last night was horrible because I didn't have any sleep, maybe 5 hours at the most. And but I struggled through. All right, Bonnie, how's it been with you?
Shit week.
Well, there you have it. All right. I thought we'd discuss it would start off with a funny story tonight. Our son, I'm going to ask Bonnie for some details here, but our son has the most peculiar way of blowing his nose. Now, you've described it as sounding like.
An elephant kazoo.
Right. You also say baby elephant sometimes.
Yes.
But anyway, it's like somebody is playing the trumpet badly. Anyway, so he is so insensitive to what is going on around him, his immediate vicinity. Bonnie is sleeping on the sofa in what we call the little reading area, the library. He comes in, like, 10, 15 feet behind you?
And just blows. He might as well have been setting off a car alarm.
And when Bonnie told me this, it reminded me when we first moved into this place 21 years ago. We had the dining area over in the different part of the house, not on a rug but on a linoleum surface. And we're having dinner, and Peter had this wet rag, to wash his face off with. He wrung it out on the floor beside where he was sitting. Oh my God.
Christ.
It was like a barbarian child. Oh my God. I don't even know what he was thinking. Anyway, alright. So, it didn't matter how fucking sleepy I was all night. When I got home today, I still couldn't sleep properly.
It didn't help that the jackasses all around here were shooting off guns. We live in the city limits of this small town, and yet people are out shooting their guns off willy-nilly. I finally timed it so that when one of the shots rang out close, I hit the car alarm and had the car go off for several minutes. Because I just wanted them to think, oh God, did we hit the car? And they were shooting that close to the fucking house.
Yeah, not only is there no firearms being shot off supposed to be within the city limits, also within a certain number of yards of somebody's house.
Or 200 feet from the road. And around here, one road over, we had a guy driving around and somebody shot out his back window, and the sheriff's department dismissive is, oh, they were just out hunting. Never found out who did it. I was talking to one of the guys who owned one of the antique stores down the way, and this was years ago, and Andy told me that he and Doris had gunshots in the side of their house where people had just been shooting, poop, and they walked out to find there were holes in their fucking house from all these idiots shooting guns.
Long time ago, I dated this girl in high school, and she sort of played around on the side with this younger boy. Anyway, he was so jealous of me that he pried information out of her, exactly where I lived, exactly where my house was and everything, where my room arrangements were and everything. He came over there one night and shot a pellet gun. He thought my sister's window was mine and shot a pellet gun through her window, and it wedged itself in her closet in her room.
Is this the psycho that chased you guys on the road? Tell the story.
Yes. So this is an escalation.
This is in high school, mind you. This is a high school kid, right?
This was right after high school. So
he's still a teenager.
Yeah. So
you're working at the mall or something?
Yeah. One day he got his friends to hang around outside my the shoe store where I worked to sort of intimidate me, and you know, and anyway, when he wheedled out of this girl that we had slept together, and that made him just lose all interest in her. He was just totally devastated. He dropped by the shoe store one day and left me a note that said, "I've decided to let you have your bed, buddy." Anyway, not too long after that, I guess he decided for one last shot. Had to close up the shoe store, you know, and be there about an hour after the mall shut down, and then go out to the back or whatever. And anyway, my girlfriend met me, in which she had a Sunbird. Her parents had bought her, and it had been raining, and I was going to drive her somewhere for like a date, and this boy started chasing us in like his, I don't know what kind of car it was. I get the impression it was like, anyway, so I decided to try to elude him, and I turned down in this neighborhood I wasn't familiar with next to the mall, and you go down this hill lit by streetlights, but then there's a large gap that's not lit, and on the other side going up you see streetlights. So you think it goes down and up, but no, it's a fucking cliff about maybe 18 feet up in the air, right? With rocks all in the bottom, and my girlfriend and I drove right off the edge of this fucking cliff thing and crashed at the bottom, and she's cracked something in her back. And anyway, this idiot shows up, and he's silhouetted at the very top of the cliff. He goes, "Is she okay?" I said, "Yeah, she's hurt. I'm gonna go get some help." And he goes, "Run!" I can't better not say her name, but he yells at her name and goes plunging down the cliff and smashes himself up on the rocks like an idiot. So anyway, I got charged with driving too fast for conditions. I tried to fight it in court, and my dad stuck his 2 cents in. "Oh, Your Honor, I'm the boy's father, and I think it's unjust that they didn't have a sign up saying road ends down here." Anyway, the judge didn't give a shit. He fined me, I don't know how much money. So that's that story. What do you think of that, Bonnie?
Unbelievably stupid.
It was. Oh, Lord. And we broke up not long after that. Her mother called me like the next day or something and said, "She's very depressed that you haven't visited her in the hospital." I was like, oh, fuck, I gotta go to the hospital and visit the chick now.
How soon afterwards did her brother die?
We weren't dating anymore when he died.
Was he 5 years older than her?
Yeah, probably. That's about right.
Because I remember having a class with him. I would have been a freshman, he would have been a senior. And I'm a year apart from you, a year
Right.
older.
Her older brother was
Amazing.
he was a fucking phenomenal
Smart.
person. Yeah, very intelligent. Played the piano. Just how would you describe it? Just making it up, as you go.
Yeah, he was so clever.
Anyway, he had some sort of issue with his pituitary or something. He was like 6'7" or something,
He was huge.
and his heart couldn't keep pace with this height. And he was only about 27. He had heart problems one day and just died.
Yeah.
And yeah, that happened after.
That was a couple years after this accident. Yeah, that death shocked all of us.
Yeah. Anyway, she is a professor of literature at some college now. Do you? I think I've outgrown giving a shit about people that I went to high school with and where they're at now and what they're doing. What do you say?
I didn't give a shit about them then.
Well, you get out of high school and you're like, well, here's about a year later from so and so. He's doing this, she's doing that. And
We've had one person we keep up with from that school. He lives up in New York. And he comes down and he talks about meeting up with all these high school people. And I'm like, why would you do that? I don't understand.
yeah, I just don't.
He got me curious once. He was talking about all these people. And so I'm like, wait a minute, was such and such or was it such and such? And I'm questioning it. So I went online. I knew that I could figure out who these people were if I went to him online, because I'm linked to him online, but none of these other people. So I started looking these people up, and every single one of these kids that we went to school with are still steeped in crazy religious fervor.
Yeah.
You, me, him, that's it. We're the only ones that broke free from that crazy school. And that is why we didn't indoctrinate our children.
Well, when I said that earlier, but I do like to keep up with the guy. I don't want to go visit anybody for God's sakes, but I do like to keep up with the gossip about, well, so and so, got arrested or whatever. But what I meant earlier was comparing myself. Well, they've already moved 5 steps up the ladder, and here I am stuck in the,
We never did that.
No,
That's the
no.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We never measured ourselves in the same terms of success. We always focused on our self-improvement. And whatever happened in the outside of the house, the economic thing, we always went, it's a means to an end so that we can improve who we are as people, and it gets us the roof, over our head, the food on our table. But more than that, we become better as people, improving ourselves. I remember years ago talking to my cousins on my dad's side, and John was talking about, oh, I don't like this side of the family. And even back then, I said, well, you know what? I do. And I want to tell you why. It's because of who they are and what all they do. And we shared our grandparents. And Howard and Laverne were amazing people. And they were the type of people that had the ability to literally build a house from the ground up. My granddad used to take the kids out to get fallen trees and take it back to their mill. And wasn't a proper mill where other people used. No, it was what they had on their property. And they would mill the lumber and set it aside and let it age and such. And then they would use it and they would build buildings. My Aunt Susan's house, my Uncle Jimmy's house, my granddad's house, they built all of them. But more than that, they were the type of people that could do anything. My grandma canned, and she had the vegetable gardens. They made perry and muscadine wine. They did quilting. My granddad was known as the local jeweler because he could fix anything. They could do electrical and plumbing. You name it, they did it. And they were interesting people. They were, ham radio operators, and they collected fossils. I don't mean collect, I mean they went out to the Flint River and actually dug them out. And, that's the type of things that I measure success by, is all the things that make you an interesting person. Not whether or not you're the corporate executive of, GE or Eli Whitney or Standard Oil or whatever.
Well, let me ask you a question. We have a mutual friend from the past named Bob. Do you think this? I'm serious. This. I'm asking your opinion about this. Do you think he is the kind of person that would look at you and go, I'm judging you by your financial success and your corporate career and so forth. Oh, you have one? Oh, you know.
I had a different relationship with Bob than you did. Bob and I were best friends, and so Bob and I would talk at a level that he didn't talk to you and the other guys about.
He was
And
always very dismissive, like, "Oh, you guys are wasting your life, wasting your young years. You should be laying down a foundation of a career." And
what I was going to say is that he and I got along really well because I could pay my own way. And none of you guys could. Even Jean-Claude couldn't seem to pay his own way. Bob and I would go out to movies and dinners. We would drive into the next largest town an hour and a half away, and we would go to plays and we would see musicals and all this kind of stuff because I had a career that paid an income, and that was important for him, and he saw that as a success that none of you guys had. And it was extremely important. And I remember, even as the friendship was coming to an end, because he ended up getting married and he couldn't stay friends with a female, no, he's getting married, blah, blah, blah. He talked to me about how he had invested in these duplexes and he was going to rent them out and he was going to live on one side until he could pay the other side off, and then he would pay it all off, and then he was going to let them be rental properties and investments. And he was talking about getting a headhunter, and during the time he went back and got his master's in business. Yes, he was very much money driven, money centric.
But also career, like, place on the
Absolutely.
ladder type thing.
Absolutely. He worked with our friend Clay's
Prestige.
dad,
Yeah.
and he would tell them about all the things that he and I did at work, and the guys just made fun of me, like, you do all this and you're not sleeping with her? He goes, oh no, that would be wrong. It's premarital sex, blah, blah, blah. Not that I would have anyway, because I was like 2 or 3 inches taller than him and outweighed him by about 20 pounds. He was a whip of a guy.
He and I had so many spats or disagreements or ill words to each other over the time I knew him, because he I don't know, he was so contemptuous of my attitude towards life, and you know and
He
so
was
baffled
so
by it,
success
really.
driven. Last time I talked to him was right after Reed was born. He and I met up at the Grit. No, that's not the last time we talked. Actually, the last time we talked was 2016, but the last time we met up in person was at the Grit, right after Reed was born. And he was just amazed that I had settled down and was going to be a mom for a while, a stay-at-home mom. And it was like, what are you going to do? And then in 2016, we touched bases again online. And because I had a public profile, he knew I was an out-and-out atheist. So we didn't want to really get together. And he was a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
He had his own business, and he was really pushing that.
Contractor doing what? Building houses or something?
Specialized in Yankee basements.
Really? That doesn't
Yeah.
sound like. Oh well, he had some sort of engineering degree, so I guess
He
so.
did.
Yeah.
He went to Penn State,
Yeah.
did their engineering programs, which is pretty good. And
I met him because my two best friends right after high school. My two best friends went off to the Navy Reserve boot camp because they both wanted to go through the pay for your college thing, and both got shafted on that deal. But so right after high school, I'm starting college, my first year in college, and I'm all by myself. So anyway, I got into trouble, and to make my parents happy again, I started going to church again. But I decided I wouldn't go to their church. I went to this Looney Tunes, rolling in the aisle, speaking in tongues, faith healing church that his mother had gone to, and that's where I met Bob, because he was looking for a church home while he was here.
I went on a date with him. That's how I met him. Trina worked with my mom at the university, and I had known Trina growing up from going to the same church programs with her. And my mom said, Trina knows somebody you should go out with. He's successful. He's working as an engineer at ABB, and he does blah, 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 blah. And so I arranged to meet him, and he and I went out. And it was a lot of fun. He had a motorcycle helmet, and we went out riding. We got something to eat. We went over to the gardens at the university campus, on an old campus. We were playing around with gum, spitting it up in the air, and he got it caught in his hair, so he went back to his place. I got the gum out of his hair with like ice cream or something. It was a lot of fun. But at the end of the evening, he and I looked at each other and said, you're great to hang out with, but neither one of us had anything in the way of interest in each other, So he said, why don't you try this church? Trina was going to it too, this crazy church. And I said, well, okay, I'll try it. And so I don't know,
But he knew you were an atheist, or
not
approaching.
at this point I wasn't. I was non-religious. I was still at that point where I was trying to figure out if church could be a social thing for me.
Yeah.
because a lot of people, like my grandparents, went to church because the church was right down the road, and that's where you met everybody, and you had apple bobbing, and they had great fall festivals at their church. But I went, I don't know, for a period of about 2 months on Sundays, and I did a volunteer thing with them, because that was always a big thing with me growing up, was volunteering. I did a volunteer project with a group, and they seemed nice enough, but there was some serious loonies there. I mean, Vanda talking about Satan and stuff. George and what's her name that had the kids, where they got up in front of the church. They started talking about how they had these foster kids, and they sat him down in a chair. Tell me where the Satan. Tell me where the devils are. Tell me where the.
Hold on. I gotta correct
Do
you.
the story. I can't quite remember it. It was
All right.
insane.
They had
I
a
was
bunch.
shocked.
They had a bunch of foster kids, and they all went to this church. Well, by the way, the church was upstairs from a frozen yogurt place
Yeah, it was a
because they couldn't afford their own place, and the owner of the yogurt shop let them have the upstairs property for free. Anyway, so these people were just lunatics from all over the city, and
that one couple.
so one of the girls told me that the woman, the foster mother, she took this little boy and she sat him down in the chair and started slapping him in the face and going, "Tell me where the demon is. Tell me where the demon is." Until finally the boy pointed somewhere in the room, and she was like, "Okay, demon, get out of here," or whatever. And I just was like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe this."
And they ended up talking about her husband, Mike Guthrie, who was a local musician, going on about, I'm praying to get the devil out of him, get the devil out of him. And then she'd talk about the devil being on her shoulder and stuff. And then there were all these people that did all this, what do you call that? Speaking in tongues shit.
Yeah.
And
I need to tell you that story.
then there was this one woman, Carmen or Carlotta or something. She was pathetic. It was sad because she was a woman who had been abused by her husband repeatedly, and she was there for moral support, and she had fallen onto religion as a way of hope, and she was there with her children, and it was just sad to listen to these people. And I remembered later on that the reason I stayed and listened to all this stuff was the fascination factor. I had grown up in a very mixed environment with regard to religion, but at some point my family finally settled down into this church for a period of middle school to high school years, where the church was great because they did all these family activities. You knew that every season there was some place for you to go. The beach, the mountains, ice skating, skiing, you name it, there was something to do. And sorry. So this church would take you to these different places and do these trips. Well, one day the youth pastor said, we're going to go to Carowinds Park, and on the way we're going to stop at the Praise the Lord services with Jim and Tammy Baker.
Oh my God.
He said, this guy is amazingly funny. You guys are going to love it because it's such a crazy show. And we're going to go and we're going to watch this. And they would do these kind of things. They would take us to these places where they were rolling in the aisles, where they were speaking in tongues, because we didn't have any of that stuff. And this church would, in part of the trips, take you to these places to show you the freak shows, to let you know what was out there. And it was really funny because they were actually making fun of other Christians. So when I was going to that church with you, with Bob, for a couple of weeks, couple of months there, it was like the freak show effect. You know, it was like when Jim Rose came to town with his tattooed and, sword swallowing crowd or something. Watching them was entertainment.
Well, okay, when I started going to the church, basically the assistant preacher, who was like the musical director and the youth pastor, he eventually took over the church and became the preacher because he had all these issues. Anyway, he was insistent to me that speaking in tongues was the key to getting magic powers.
Filled with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, because it gives you a direct connection to God, and you get all this psychic feedback, or all this whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to do it. He goes, well, you at first you just make it up. You just start babbling, and eventually it comes to you naturally. Well, I imagine it would, wouldn't it? You've gone crazy. So anyway, I was convinced, and I would drive. I was going to this small college, about 45 minutes from my house, and I would babble in the car to myself with just made up bullshit.
Fake it till you make it.
That's right, all the way up there and all the way back, just like a crazy person. And after a while,
At some point or another, you wake up and go, "What is this shit show?"
well, I mean, I guess some people get an emotional
Yeah, they do.
addiction to it because it makes them feel better or something. I don't know.
They rely on faith instead of facts.
There was a woman there that would bring a spiral-bound notebook every service, and she would sit there with it in her lap and a pen, and she wouldn't even listen to the sermon or anything else. She would sit there and write down prophecies and cry while she was doing it. And when she saw you after the service, she'd come up to you and go, I had this prophecy about you or for you during the service, and she would hand it to you and all this shit,
I'm not sure I remember that one.
I never told you that story before.
There were a
God.
lot of really sad sacks at that place. There were a lot of kids there that were with foster families. And a lot of people there that couldn't have their own kids, or that those that did were in a horrible relationship. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Tom and Beth, who were there, you remember he was a handyman and she was a pretty lady.
Yeah. He was an asshole.
Her father was the one that was publicly outed
That's
as
right,
a Boy Scout child molester here in the area.
But I just remember something about her. She was a singer, and
Yes,
back
she
when
was.
whatever his name was, the old man was in charge of the Atlanta Symphony. She sang with him. What was his name? Robert
know.
Scott? Something.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
She sang with the Athens Chorale every year for Christmas and stuff, and Beth was just one of these beautiful voices. She'd been classically trained, but she decided to do the whole trad life thing, and she ended up with this guy, Tom, and the only reason they had their house was because Beth's father had given them some kind of money or something. And so they lived in one of these traditional neighborhoods like Forest Heights or something. And I remember going over to their house, and she looked like that woman. Who's that really curvaceous redhead?
Oh, Christina Hendricks?
Yeah, she had that kind of curvaceousness to her.
Who did?
Beth did. And
She was much heavier than that.
no, she was very curvaceous. And I remember watching her walk around, and she had this whole 1950s persona of, oh, these are the babies.
Yeah, take my husband's
Lord's
abusive
work,
attitude towards me.
And I remember being around Tom one-on-one because I had to hire him to fix something. And he was what my mother would have called a sleazebag.
Yeah.
He was this close to always trying to figure out how far to push it to see if he could get a leg over.
Right.
Just the double entendre, the sexual innuendo that was there in everything he did. Every movement, every word, the way he looked at you, he thought he was God's gift to women.
He also had a bit of a short temper. We had dinner. The church people had dinner at somebody's house. It might have been the preacher's house. He's sitting on one side of the table, and his wife is sitting on the other, and they had this new baby.
Oh, she was adorable.
And she said something like, give me the baby or whatever. And it just pissed him off or something. And he basically almost threw the baby across the table. And the preacher was like, Tom, like, Jesus, you're about to kill the baby.
I remember now, Bob and I had gone over there to their house, kind of as a couple, kind of not. People assumed things about us, and we just kind of, just went, let's just, go and...
I'll tell you something else about him in a minute.
Yeah, well...
My friend Mitch, we're not going to say names too much, but I mean, when he got married the first time, they hired Tom to take the photographs of the wedding.
Oh.
So, okay, now a week's go by and they get the the prints back, right? And before Mitch shows me the pictures, he said, "Do you remember our wedding taking place at night?" And the fucking pictures all look like they had the bride had come out at nighttime. I don't know how he did it, but it was like noon, and he made it. It was horrible.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that he couldn't hold down a steady job because he wouldn't work for somebody. He wanted to be his own boss. So in addition to being a handyman, he was also a photographer and half a dozen other things. Yeah, like I said, Beth's dad had to keep them going. You know, that's funny. I actually have a connection to Beth from childhood. There used to be a design and ad contest, and I won several years in a row. Because it was just where kids would draw ads for local businesses, and it would be
It was a contest in the
time.
local newspaper.
Yeah, and it was at Halloween. It was just these spooky little things and stuff. I won one year for her dad's exterminating company.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember having my parents drive me around at night. It must have been sixth grade, maybe seventh grade, and drive me around at night so I could get ideas about what the business's ad should be. And some of these places like Sons of Italy and some others. Sons of Italy was a pizza place, okay? The company that serves wine with the pizza. Anyway,
No, it doesn't even do that. I mean, they would have it in the back in one of those little wrapped bottles, with the
Right,
woven
right.
stuff. And
Yeah.
but honestly, you could get a beer. Most people just gotta,
but anyway,
sodas.
so this is my parents. We're driving around now. Where is this Sons of Italy place? Oh, here it is. I've seen it before. But my dad's like, "Oh, it's a beer joint."
Because they had neon signs that said Bud or Michelob served here.
Oh
And
my god!
it was just something you got with your. And nobody went in there to
You
drink.
wouldn't believe how many
a bar.
You don't believe how many times my dad would say that about some place. Just
It's like a beer joint, and then he
that's
was
right.
craving a beer all those years, and now he
Yeah,
drinks
yeah.
with no thought of
Well,
anything.
there used to be a Blimpies downtown a long time ago, and we were like, my dad, me, and my sister all were like stuck in traffic or something, and we're like, well, it'd be great to go out to eat. And I said, what about that place? And he goes, oh no, it might be a beer joint, and I just, oh my god,
It might be a beer joint.
oh Lord. What a shitty fucking week, though. I'm happy to be home now, but Jesus.
Let's take a break for a second.
Okay, I'm gonna hit the pause button. Yes, we are back. Just double checking. All right. I was just thinking, if we made the show more structured, so we have, like, different portions for different sort of topics or subjects or categories. I was thinking if we had gripe time, what's your gripe this week? This is my gripe this week.
Oh.
They put less and less goddamn chapstick in the tube every fucking year. The damn thing used to be full. It would last. Just kills me.
Okay, my gripe has to do with politics this week.
Okay.
Shall we delve into that arena, politics?
If you want to.
Trump's appointments, cabinet nominations this week have come out, and it is an utter shit show, or should we say a clown car overstuffed with clowns. So that's where my gripes lies, all the cabinet appointments.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was thinking about writing an essay about this, how it suddenly struck me that these names, potential names for the cabinet, are so outlandish that I suddenly realized, well, what's probably going on here is Trump and all of this, clown cabinet, and it's really is bread and circuses. I think
Yeah, next to a horse in the Senate.
I think that the people who really run the country know that the American people have by this time become so addicted to instantaneous entertainment at all times that they can run this spectacle and install him as a puppet president, puppet leader, while they do whatever the fuck they want behind the scenes.
We knew as an electorate that we were hiring the Celebrity Apprentice, whatever apprentice reality show guy. And we went from having Apprentice in Trump 1.0. This time for Trump 2.0, it seems we have Survivor, the fall of the nation.
He somehow, I remember Saturday Night Live making fun of him and Ivanka back in the 80s, because he had somehow parlayed his, that book he wrote and the whole swap over from Ivanka to Marla Maples as fuel for his more fame, celebrity. And it was just like, he's famous for what? He's just nothing.
It feels like with the cabinet appointments this week, they were dealing with like casting for one of those reality shows. The people are that absurd. I mean, we've got Kristi Noem. She's going to be what, DHS, Department of Homeland Security or something? I mean, this is a woman who took a goat and a dog out to the gravel pit and shot them. And my first response was, at least they'll be able to save millions upon millions of dollars in deportations by taking everybody out to the gravel pit to shoot them. Avoid a long, lengthy trial for terrorists. Take them out to the gravel pit and shoot them. Oh, those pesky civil rights protesters who are BLM or Antifa, take them out to the gravel pit and shoot them. And I know that was a sarcastic response, but it feels like the right response to reality TV show selection of a cabinet. They have yet to appoint the, what's the guy called that's in charge of health? Jocelyn Elders held the position.
Well, she wasn't Surgeon General.
Surgeon General, that's what I'm talking about.
She was?
She was, yeah. So they've got a Surgeon General now. Murtha is former military, doctor, etc. And this week we've seen a lot of people that have come out of Florida, and the Florida circles appointed to the cabinet. And there is this guy, the Surgeon General of Florida right now, who has Ron DeSantis' lapdog, and he is anti-vax. He has promoted conspiracy theories about COVID and its vaccine. He's promoted conspiracy ideas about treatment for COVID. He has shunned mask mandates and closures. He has been, basically the CDC has scolded him, reprimanded him. He's been admonished by numerous medical agencies, etc. And to boot, he believes in stopping any kind of treatment for trans children. And I thought, that guy is going to make the perfect Surgeon General choice.
Yeah.
For Trump.
Well, I was going to mention that, the last time we had something similar with Trump was like with Reagan, because Reagan was so fucking stupid. But even he had the sense to say, one time they asked him something about him being an actor and being president. Was it a drawback or something? And he said, I don't see how you could do this job without being an actor. I mean, he had enough prescience for that,
But he also...
But see, Trump, what I'm getting at is, Trump won't admit that this is all such a charade. It's like pro wrestling.
It's a way for him also to get money. But let's not dismiss Reagan in any way. This is a guy who appointed James Watt as Secretary of Interior, a guy who believed that since Jesus was coming back any time now, that we could just go ahead and use the resources with impunity. And if you thought Drill Baby Drill came from Trump, no, James Watt was the one that came up with that. So the Republicans love putting people into these cabinet positions that honestly are there for the money or are there to do their Lord's bidding.
I was telling Mitch, it's amazing. All the people that they're choosing for these cabinet positions are either totally unqualified or openly, publicly hostile to the functions of the very fucking department they're going to head.
Doug Burgum, I think it's Interior today. Doug Burgum is South Dakota governor. He is openly allied with gas and oil. He has been pushing for one of those big oil gas lines, oil and gas lines through his state, and they just put him in charge as the fox in charge of the hen house. And then, of course, there's Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. He was due to have charges brought up in the House of Representatives against him for drug use, sex with minors, and trafficking of minors across state lines for sex trafficking, basically. And that report was due out today, I believe. And he resigned 2 days ago when Trump announced that he wanted Matt Gaetz to be his new Attorney General.
So
this is a guy who basically did nothing but walk into a room at an attorney's office where he worked, bring in the coffee, come in, shake hands, and leave. He's got no real-world experience as a lawyer. And he's got all these allegations hanging over him. And people in his own party have talked on camera about how Matt Gaetz would walk around with his cell phone and show them pictures of chicks like, isn't she hot, etc. And talk about how he'd been crushing erectile dysfunction pills to keep it up all night to go at these girls and drug-fueled parties, etc. People in his own party hate him.
Well, let me ask you something.
And now the senators, many of whom are Republican, are going, we're not going to...
See, that's an interesting thing, because if they defy Trump, will he blow his top at his own party? I mean, does he think he can get away with that?
Well, he started off the week saying, I want, and he listed the things he wanted. He said, right now there are 3 of you who want to be the Senate Majority Leader now that McConnell's leaving. And he goes, I want these guys appointed and confirmed this week. And then I want recess appointments for all of my cabinet positions. There is no need for us to waste time for the confirmation process and the confirmation hearings. He just stepped on some senators' feet. See, senators are there for 6 years. So the idea is that they go between terms, they cross over, and they've got the ability to say, fuck you every once in a while. And the senators like the amount of power given to them in the Constitution for things like the confirmation process. And for Trump to do this week has pissed them off. So much so that he didn't get his pick, Rick Scott from Florida. They put in John Thune, who is the number 2 currently, was the number 2 under McConnell. And that was a big fuck you. And now they're saying, well, number one, some of these people aren't qualified. They aren't eligible for recess appointments because the recess appointment in X department requires that you come up through the process to qualify for a recess department. And that was notable for the defense guy. And then also for justice.
Are you saying that means that they have to hire somebody from within the ranks?
No, it doesn't mean that. It means that if you're going to forego the confirmation process and have what's called a recess appointment, that is an interim appointment without a confirmation process, which is supposed to come later, that in certain departments it has to be someone who is qualified as somebody who's within the department has worked their way up, okay? And if they haven't, somebody like Matt Gaetz has not been working at Justice, he does not qualify for the recess appointment.
Well, we will see if anybody defies Trump how he treats them now that he's...
Well, a lot of senators this week on both sides of the aisle have said Matt Gaetz is a horrible choice. Everybody knows his reputation as a sex trafficking pedophile drug user.
I remember, like, right after Clinton was elected, re-elected, I'm sorry, or maybe it was Bush Jr., but they said, well, now he's a lame duck. I mean, like, still got 4 years to go, but...
What?
Yeah, I wonder if what they meant was, though, he has no more
Well, there's
power.
there's a limited amount of things that can be done in the Congress itself too. And so right now, Biden is in a position where he wants to do some judicial appointments, appointments to the
Well,
federal judiciary benches, but he can't do it because the Congress is in this little flux position, and they're going on about how we know we shouldn't do this, we should wait, and so everybody's in flux right now. But
well, we need to get off politics for a little bit before we end
for
the
our
show.
sanity.
Right before we end the show, we got about maybe we'll say another 15 minutes. So what you been reading lately?
Some Cynthia Heimel. Today I just picked up It Can't Happen Here by
Sinclair Lewis.
Sinclair Lewis.
Upton Sinclair. Upton.
Nope,
No, Sinclair Lewis. Yeah,
Lewis.
that's right. That's right.
Sinclair Lewis.
But you did get The Jungle.
I have that on order, and that's Upton Sinclair. Now, if I understood correctly, his wife had spoken about the rallies that were going on at that point with the America First rallies and all that crap up at Madison Square Garden. And she was a big, she covered a lot of the Hitler news of the day. And so she brought a lot of that stuff home, and they discussed it. If I'm recalling my literature correctly, and so the book is based on part of what was going on at the time, and what his wife had also observed, and the idea was, could Hitler and his regime and their politics happen here in America? And this is the same guy who wrote Elmer Gantry, which was a scathing rebuke of religion and their control over people and the simple-mindedness of the populace. So I'm really looking forward to reading this.
Yeah, I am reading the second novel in the Dune series. I'm also reading another Cynthia Heimel book that Bonnie got, and I'm also reading The Winners by Julio Cortázar.
The nice thing about the Heimel books that we've got is it's like the Gore Vidal essays that we picked up this week also. These are just that. They're essays. They're short essays. Sometimes, they're 4 or 5 pages. Sometimes there's 12 or 15 pages. So you can read that in between. And so I've decided I'm going to set aside the Heimel for those moments when I'm feeling a little sleepy and I just kind of want to relax. But the focused reading is going to be on It Can't Happen Here.
Well, I am really stunned at how well written the Dune book is, because I just don't see him as a stylist. But in this, the conversations between all the plotters and everything is so formal, with hidden meanings or whatever, that I just didn't expect him to be that good of a writer when it comes to stuff like that. But it's really good so far. Oh Lord, I want to get down to just one book I'm reading.
I think one of the reasons I'm on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to reading books, oftentimes I'll immerse myself in just standard pulp, murder, mystery, fiction, procedural drama, that sort of thing, because I can read it and really get into it and just, it's almost like binge watching, but it's binge reading. And then I use the essays for my meat. The meatiness, the things that I want some insight into. Now, some of the essays that I've been reading lately are funny, but some of them are also, other essays can be very insightful, thought-provoking.
Yeah, ever since I just dropped trying to learn another language and went back to regular reading, I'm getting so much more reading done than having forever.
Yeah, I remember years ago when I was sick for several years, going in and out of doctors' offices, and I just picked up, I remember I read the entire Nero Wolfe series. What is that, 20, 30, 40 books?
Probably.
And we had picked him up at a garage thrift sale kind of thing at one of the churches. And I remember taking them into the waiting rooms and just pouring through them.
Well,
Such a distraction. It's so nice.
I think that increasingly, over the last 50 years, really, people have begun to forget how important direct reading, like book reading, is. Because our species has subtly and slowly evolved to work with literacy. Literacy actually changes the physical nature of the brain, and with fewer people actually reading, like close reading, some people call it, which really, to be honest, can only be found with a tangible book, as far as I'm concerned. I think those of us who are really getting back into reading have an advantage.
I mentioned last week that I think one of the things that happened in the election was that too many people relied on the length of a tweet or the length of a TikTok video to get their information. They went for the punchy headline, the catchy tune, the thing that was nice eye candy. It was witty repartee at the moment, but there was no depth to it.
Mm-hmm.
We see this now post-election. Google has been releasing the analytics of questions like, after the election, people were Googling, what is a tariff? What the fuck, people? Seriously? Because I was reading the articles in the New York Times, on Financial Times, that talked about tariffs and their impacts. And they assume that you need a quick introduction every time that you read even one of these middle school level articles, and most newspaper articles are written for 8th grade reading level. They'll give you a quick little summary, tariffs, which end up causing, costing, etc., etc., and the price, the increase is then passed along to those that purchase, and then on to the consumer, blah, blah, blah. They describe this in every single article, but most people in the election just followed those quick tweets, that snappy little bit of something that sounded cute at the moment, without understanding what was actually being said. And reading changes the way that you approach these things. This week I've seen people post these nifty little things, and my question is, what's your source on that?
I just thought of something. It's very important, and it was important for me, certainly, that your parents read to you directly. You're sitting right beside them, hold the book together. And I really think that with the ubiquity of phones now, people are they can't possibly be doing that.
No, they're not. I used to work with somebody back in the 20-teens who had a brand new infant daughter, and over the 2 years I worked with him, his daughter grew up, and he'd bring her in and sit her down in the chair next to me because, well, I was the mom at the office, and she had a little pad that she would tablet, and she would punch the things, and she had little earphones, and she would listen to it. And I ended up going out to the warehouse and getting books and sitting down with a child and showing her pages. And then I started selecting books for her and set them aside in a box. I don't know if he ever took them home, but the child loved looking at the pictures and the physical touching and turning the page and pointing.
There's a Groucho Marx quote. He said, I find television very educational. Whenever somebody turns it on, I go in the other room and read a book.
Yes. Fabulous quote.
Oh, Lord. Oh, my God. I am so fucking out of it. Like I said, even as sleepy as I was when I got home, I still was sleeping in fits and starts.
Hey,
Sometimes you're so... Huh?
Did you post that picture of you leaning over the table at the lake where you see the hairline?
Yeah. I was drawing. You took a picture of me at the kitchen table in the
Yeah, your
cottage.
scar is
Is it that noticeable?
It is extremely noticeable.
I used it for the
When I used it on my blog, I made a note about your 9-inch scar
Oh,
that runs
great.
from behind your ear all across to the top of your head.
32 staples, as I recall.
Yeah, and what, metal plates or something, and
I think there's some rivets in my head.
something like that.
I can't go out in a
Love you,
thunderstorm.
Frankenstein. Monster. Oh, sweet mystery of life. At last I found you.
Oh my God. I wish it was a 3-day weekend, 4-day weekend.
Oh.
I got another whole week before I'm on vacation.
You got a day to work, and then you got your the court thing, and then you got 3 days. So at least it's 4 days of work next week.
Yeah. Well, all right. Everybody wish me luck about the traffic court thing.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
All right, we're gonna leave it there.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.